Welcome back to Trust Your Oats. Throughout this season, we have talked about the soil, the science, the athletes, and the community. We have talked about the why of gluten-free oats, but today we are going to talk about the how. How do you actually guarantee that a bag of oats sitting on a grocery store shelf in New York is completely free of gluten when those oats were grown on a farm in Wyoming or Saskatchewan months earlier? The answer is not just good intentions. The answer is data. The answer is technology. The answer is a relentless, uncompromising system of traceability. When you buy a car, it comes with a vehicle identification number, a VIN. You can look up its entire history, where it was built, when it was sold, and if it has ever been in an accident. But what about your food? Until very recently, the food supply chain was essentially a black box. Once a crop left the farm, it was mixed, mingled, and moved through a complex web of brokers, processors, and distributors. If something went wrong, finding the source was like finding a needle in a haystack. Today, we are exploring how that is changing. We are looking at the technology, the regulations, and the rigorous documentation that creates a transparent path from the farm to the consumer. We are going to explore how the Purity Protocol uses these systems to ensure that our gluten-free promise is maintained at every single step. This is Trust the System. To understand why modern traceability is so important, we have to look at what happens when it fails. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that foodborne illness sickens roughly 48 million Americans every single year. That results in 128,000 hospitalizations and 3,000 deaths annually. And when an outbreak happens, the clock starts ticking. Let's go back to the fall of 2006. A nationwide outbreak of E. coli 0157:H7 linked to fresh spinach swept across the United States. It caused 205 illnesses, 104 hospitalizations, and 3 deaths across 26 states. Investigators knew the spinach came from California, but because of slow, incomplete, paper-based traceability records, it took weeks to identify the specific lots and fields responsible. In the meantime, the FDA had to issue a blanket warning advising consumers not to eat any fresh spinach. The entire industry ground to a halt. Or consider the 2008 Salmonella outbreak linked to the Peanut Corporation of America. That outbreak caused over 700 illnesses and 9 deaths. Because peanut paste was used as an ingredient in so many different products, and because ingredient-level traceability was so poor, it led to the recall of over 3,900 products from more than 350 companies. Historically, the food industry operated on a principle called one up, one back. This meant that a company only had to know who they bought a product from and who they sold it to. If you were a distributor, you knew you bought oats from a mill and you sold them to a bakery. But you did not know which farm grew the oats, and the bakery did not know which mill processed them. The chain was fragmented. When a recall happened, investigators had to manually stitch those fragments together, often sifting through filing cabinets full of paper invoices and bills of lading. That system was not just inefficient, it was dangerous. And for the celiac community, where a single grain of wheat can cause an autoimmune reaction, one up, one back is simply not good enough. The landscape of food safety changed dramatically with the passage of the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, and specifically Section 204. In November 2022, the FDA published the Food Traceability Final Rule under FSMA Section 204. This rule moves the industry far beyond the old one-up, one-back standard. Under this new rule, companies handling certain higher-risk foods must maintain detailed records of key data elements at every critical tracking event. What does that mean in plain English? A critical tracking event is a specific moment in the supply chain, growing, harvesting, cooling, packing, shipping, or transforming the food. At every one of those events, the company must record key data elements: the traceability lot code, the exact location, the date, and the quantity. And crucially, if the FDA requests these records during an investigation, the company must provide them within 24 hours. You cannot do that if your records are sitting in a dusty filing cabinet. While the FDA rule is technology neutral, meaning they do not mandate how you store the data, just that you have it, the reality is that meeting these requirements demands digital transformation. This is where organizations like GS1 come in. GS1 is the global standards organization that created the barcode. They developed the Global Trade Item Number, or GTIN, to identify exactly what a product is, and the Global Location Number, or GLN, to identify exactly where it is. By using these standardized digital identifiers, supply chain partners can finally speak the same language. So how fast can traceability be when the whole system is digitized? In August 2017, Walmart announced a partnership with IBM to test a blockchain-based food traceability system called IBM Food Trust. Blockchain is essentially an immutable, shared digital ledger. When a farmer harvests a crop, they log it on the blockchain. When the packer boxes it, they log it. When the distributor ships it, they log it. No one can alter or delete the previous entries. It creates a permanent, tamper-proof history of the food's journey. Walmart tested this system using sliced mangoes. Using their traditional methods, it took Walmart's team 7 days to trace a package of sliced mangoes back to the specific farm in Mexico where they were grown. Using the blockchain system, it took 2.2 seconds. From 7 days to 2.2 seconds. That is the difference between a massive industry-wide recall and a targeted surgical removal of a single contaminated lot. Now, while blockchain is the cutting edge, you do not necessarily need a blockchain to achieve incredible traceability. You need a closed loop. You need a system where every participant is accountable to the same strict standards. And that brings us to the Purity Protocol. The Purity Protocol is not just a farming method, it is a comprehensive traceability and verification system. When we talk about Purity Protocol oats, we are talking about an unbroken chain of custody. It starts with the seed. The seed must be certified pure. It is planted in a dedicated gluten-free field, a field that has a documented history of being free from wheat, barley, and rye for a specific number of years. When it is time to harvest, the farmer uses dedicated gluten-free equipment. The oats are transported in dedicated trucks. They are stored in dedicated silos. They are milled in dedicated gluten-free facilities. At every single one of these critical tracking events, the lot is documented. If you pick up a bag of GF Harvest oats, the lot code on that bag can be traced all the way back to the specific field where those oats were grown and the specific day they were harvested. But documentation is only half of the equation. The other half is verification. Trust, but verify. In the Purity Protocol system, testing happens at multiple stages. The incoming grain is tested. The in-process material is tested. The finished product is tested. And we are not just testing to the FDA's standard of 20 parts per million. Many Purity Protocol brands and third-party certifiers like the Gluten-Free Certification Organization require testing to less than 10 parts per million. To do this, the industry relies on two primary types of testing. First is DNA testing, which uses PCR technology to look for the specific genetic material of wheat, barley, or rye. This tells us what the contaminant is. Second is ELISA testing, enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. This test measures the actual gluten proteins directly. It is the gold standard for quantifying exactly how much gluten is in a sample, ensuring it falls well below that strict 10 parts per million threshold. When you combine dedicated fields, dedicated equipment, lot-level digital traceability, and rigorous ELISA testing, you eliminate the black box. You replace hope with data. food supply chain is incredibly complex, but complexity should never be an excuse for a lack of transparency. Whether it is through blockchain technology, GS1 standards, or the rigorous requirements of the Purity Protocol, the tools exist to track our food from the seed to the shelf. For the celiac community, traceability is not just a corporate buzzword. It is the difference between sickness and health. It is the foundation of trust. When a system is built on transparency, when every step is documented and verified, you do not have to guess if your food is safe. You know. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Trust Your Oats. In our next episode, we will be looking at the future of farming, exploring how regenerative agriculture and cutting-edge technology are coming together to create the next generation of sustainable oats. Until then, stay healthy, stay curious, and as always, trust your oats.